Here's how to choi bar everyone in your gym. In this video, we'll cover all the details you need to start hitting choi bars, and we'll address 3 of the most common problems you'll run into along the way. Stay tuned to the end for some positional games to play to improve your choi bar skills. All right, let's get started with entering the choi bar from a knee shield. So I need 2 things if I'm gonna enter the choi bar. I need his elbow away from his hip, and I need space to clear my top leg around his back. Let's start by gaining some elbow separation away from the hip. If I can ever just reach for a grip, I'm gonna go for it. But one thing I can do to encourage him to give me that space is reach for a scoop grip under his leg. If he lets me get this, I can begin entering the legs, but he's typically gonna cross face me. So as he cross faces me, he extends his arm away from his hip. I'm gonna use that to take my grip. So I'm gonna look for a shallow underhook with my bottom arm just above the elbow, and I'm gonna look to slap his wrist towards my bicep with my other hand. Now, this bend in his arm is super important. If I let his elbow stay close to his hip, he can use his lat to pull it back, and I'm not gonna win that battle. And so instead, I get a rotation of that elbow, putting tension on his rotator cuff, which allows me to win this fight. Now, once I get this bend in his arm, I keep my shallow underhook engaged, and it's time to start opening space for my top leg. So I'm gonna retract my top arm and build a frame across his neck, keeping my shallow underhook tight to my chest. Now I'm gonna flare my top elbow out, and I'm gonna drag my knee to the inside of my forearm, right across his collarbone. Now I have a decent frame where he can't crash back into me, and I have his arm isolated. Now once we're here, I need to control his posture. If he just pops up, he's gonna destroy all my progress. And so I drag this knee from the collarbone to over his shoulder. The weight on his shoulder helps me control his posture as I progress. Once I get over the shoulder, I throw my foot into the hip, maintaining tension and isolation of that arm. It's time to run down our main path and finish the armbar. What I'm gonna look to do is keep this nice and tight and lace my top foot across to his far hip. This hook keeps him in place and applies a ton of tension over his shoulder to finish this armbar. Now it's very important here that my bottom toes are hooked around his calf. That's gonna help create cross tension against my primary foot, and it's gonna prevent him from rolling. Now once I get here, my feet locked into place, I'm going to grab over the thumb line with my top hand, slide down to a 2-on-1, and lock my elbows in place. I'm always maintaining tension, not just across my hip, but out of his socket as well. Now, as I look to finish here, I want to avoid him straightening his arm and turning back into me. And so I want to make sure that the path I take to finish is not straight back, but slightly up and around my top hip. Now I hip in to finish. Now it's time to address some of the most common problems you'll run into as you attempt this choi bar. So in this case, he's clasped his hands together as I reach this hip post. So as he clasps his hands, the first thing I want to look to do is increase the security of my grip. So I'm going to lean up onto my shoulder, and I'm going to lace my top arm elbow to elbow. My bottom hand grabs his wrist, my top hand grabs my own to lace up a Kimura grip. Once I'm here, I hug it tight to my chest and secure. Now I need to get my bottom foot free to help me out on the roll, and so I'm going to stomp his hip and kick myself out just a little bit. Now as I get this free, I lean up onto my shoulder and I throw my top shin across the base of his neck. This will allow me to tuck his head and force a roll. So I lean into this shin, I roll over my shoulder and force him to roll through. As we roll through, we want to retract both our knees towards our chest, and we're going to use the shin under his head to lift his head slightly. That's going to allow us to pummel our bottom leg underneath his head, throw the top one over for a nice head scissor position. Once I get here, it's fairly easy to break the grip. I keep my bottom arm elbow to elbow nice and tight. Top arm goes elbow to wrist, and I grab my own neck. Now I fall towards his shoulder using my inner shin as a pry bar, and I look to break that grip. Once I break the grip, switch to a 2-on-1, pull towards the bottom hip to finish. Now for another problem. In this case, instead of clasping his hands together, he's laced his primary arm underneath his thigh. Now I could go try to peel these fingers, but sometimes it's too difficult. And so I'm gonna use the fact that this hand is committed and the other one is posting to set up a nice triangle. So the first thing I look to do is secure this grip. So again, I'm gonna lace my top arm through, my bottom hand towards his wrist, and I'm gonna grab my own to secure my Kimura grip. Now again, I kick my bottom leg free by planting on his hip and shrimping out. Now, as I get here, I lace my top leg into the middle and I back heel with both legs. Now, I need to get his head closer towards his arm to triangle, so I'm going to take a quick back step with my top knee, and I'm going to start putting pressure on the top of his head inward. I can lace my shallow triangle and squeeze to finish. Now for our final problem. In this case, he decides to tripod onto his legs. Now, if I were to lace my top leg through, there's nothing stopping him from running over me and collapsing down. Instead of lacing this top leg deep and getting smashed, I'm going to keep it shallow as a frame against his body. Because my bottom leg was freed, I'm free to lace my shin across his belt and hook at his waist. Both of these together keep him from running in either direction. Now, because his shoulders are so much lower than his hip, it's fairly easy to sweep him here. So I'm just going to use my bottom leg as an elevator as I turn towards my back to sweep. Now I just need to lace my feet and finish the armbar. Now time for some games you can play to improve your choi bar skills. So this first one, I'm going to have a choi bar fully locked in. Bottom foot hooked on his calf, top leg hooked across his hip, and he's going to have a grip in place. I win by finishing this, breaking his grip, and finishing the armbar. He wins by escaping position. Now this next game starts a little bit further from the submission. I'm going to begin with my top foot planted on his hip, my bottom toes hooked on his calf, and an elbow deep grip on his primary arm. I can win by either finishing the armbar or by sweeping him to a spiderweb position. He can win by escape. Now this last game will help you piece it all together. So I'm starting a knee shield with a shallow underhook and a wrist grip and my top side knee across his neck. My only ways to win are to sweep or to submit, and he can win by pass or sub. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more free content, and be sure to check out our Patreon for detailed instructionals, full classes, and more.